Alright, so now I'm going to give you a lesson on IDE cables. These cables are used to actually hook up your hard drives, floppy drives, CD-ROM drives. Okay? Basically, the IDE cable can come in a matter of different numbers of pins also, just like that power supply did too. I actually can't tell you the number settings with these cables, but this is an old cable. The way I look at it is like the old cables are thicker and the wires are much thicker. Like you can see the wire patterns a lot thicker. But when you have like a newer cable for the hard drives, they're a little bit finer and there are a little more pins involved, or no, there's a lot more pins involved. Basically, this is a more finer one. You would use the finer one for basically hard drives. All right, a lot of newer hard drives, if you have to use an IDE cable, would want this fine cable. All right, I can't break it down any better than that for you right now. There's more, technological issues with it, but regardless, for the basics, this is what it is. All right, so I'm going to use the thicker cable to hook up the CD-ROMs right now. And the way this works is, if you look at this cable real carefully, one side of the cable has a red, it's kind of red, like right along the edge, right around here. I don't know if you can see that clearly on this camera. But this side that has color usually determines the power side of the cable, or the positive side of the cable. What that means is, I'll give you a basic breakdown on how I do it. The red part of the cable means that's the part that's aimed towards the power on the unit that you're using. So say for instance, where I have to plug in the CD-ROM, for example, like I'll take one of the power cables right here and plug it into the CD-ROM. This is what I mean. So basically, if I plug this in over on the right side of the CD-ROM, well, on this cable, the cable has to be, the red end has to be aimed towards where I plug the power in, basically, okay? So it's always red towards the power. That's what I call that, all right? So, this is how you basically hook it up. Now, if you look at the cable, it has two ends, two black spots where you can plug stuff in. You can plug it in the middle, or you can plug it like at the top. The top is really what you would call the primary, and then the middle is the secondary, or you can call it the master. There's the top, or the second one is the slave. Okay? And then you notice the rest of the cable's pretty long. All right, so the one with the two ends is actually the top of the cable that plugs into the drives. And then the other long part of the cable is the part of the cable that plugs into the motherboard. All right, now on the motherboard you have these slots. They're called IDE slots. That's what you plug this into. Okay, they come the same way. Now there's a primary IDE, and then there's a secondary IDE, or a master IDE and a slave IDE, okay? So, or IDE 1, IDE 2. However they're going to say it. It's on the board. You can read it, like I said, with a magnifying glass and see which one these are and whatnot. So basically, when I'm going to do this machine, see, I have a SATA drive instead of an IDE drive this time. So I'm going to use the primary the primary IDE to plug in my CD-ROMs. And in the event that I had IDE hard drive, I would have plugged the IDE 1, or the primary, for my hard drives. But due to the fact that I have a SATA drive instead of IDE, I'm going to plug my CD-ROMs in with this IDE cable in the IDE 1, or the master IDE, or the primary IDE, however you want to call it. All right. So just like with the cable will only go in one specific way, and that's because usually they have like a hole blocked over here sometimes or they have a notch on the cable. Like for example, I don't have one to give you an example. These cables seem to don't have the notch, but if you look carefully, you see what I mean about one pinhole is missing, because you know that's made so that you don't put the cable in wrong on the board. So don't press this in just like any old way. You have to look at the board's pins and make sure that you got it correctly on the right side. That's in case that it doesn't have a little notch on the side. Usually there's a notch on the sides of these cables to them, let you know which side is up and down or right and left. Alright, so we'll just keep on moving along. I can see in my board that it's I can see that the hole lines up with the power faced towards where I plugged in the cable. Alright, so now we have that where I plugged in basically the board. Alright, so I have a short wire here, so you see, on that note, I'm going to have to try. See, this is a server case, so it makes it a little bit different than others. You might have to get longer wires sometimes. Alright, so I'll just plug this cable into the first drive underneath for now. Alright? Okay, so like I said, this cable has white on the end instead of red. So that's towards the power. And basically that's the way I want it. You just turn around now and you plug in your CD-ROM power. Okay, so that's how you do an IDE cable, and basically plug in your drives and have the wires set correctly. Just remember that, you know, there is a positive and negative game going throughout the whole process of building a computer. Alright? Some wires are preset and they'll plug in the right way, and some wires don't. So the ones that don't, that's why you need to know the code of, the red side of the cable aims towards the power when you're installing your drives. And when you look on the IDE side, when you're plugging in the cable down at the the primary and master IDE on the motherboard, you make sure that you have the cable turned the right way so that you don't bend a pin inside of the motherboard, because there's usually in the cable there's one pin blocked so that the cable doesn't go in the wrong way, like I was saying before. So be aware of that down at this point of the motherboard. Alright, and that's my tutorial on how to install an IDE style drive.